and this is something that I did in my Algebra 2 classes. It's a Bible thing. Some of you may know it well enough to know. The story of the widow's mite. You heard it? You know of it? George does. It's about essence, and this, I'm not teaching religion now, I'm just telling a story. It's about those who would give quantities and do it publicly and let everybody know they were doing it. And then here came this little widow, didn't have anything really. She came up and dropped in her little tiny coin. It's the only one she had, didn't have any more. Okay, my story is this, Clara. Some nearly 2,000 years later, the family, descendants of this widow, decided that she was put upon by the synagogues and the Jewish leadership. So they brought suit against them to be reimbursed that one mite, which is about a half penny or something like that, compounded annually at 6%. Now, have I said anything here about religion? No. I've given her a heck of a math problem. But you can do it with a calculator. It's the power function, isn't it? Y to the x, something like that. In other words, you take it 1.06 raised to the 2,000th power times 1/2 cent. How much, kids, do you think that would amount to? Tell me. Now I'm teaching math here, George.
No, actually, and economics.
You think it'd be $100?
It's a lot.
Think it'd be 1,000?
More than that.
More than that? Think it'd be 50,000?
Even closer. It's a lot. It's a lot, whichever way.
All right, I want you to work that out tomorrow, and I report to George how much it actually is. You got it right here. You can go ahead and do it on your own. But I'm going to tell you ahead of time, guys. It'll be a 1 followed by more zeros than you can think about.
May I ask you a question?
All right.
About that year when you saw the hatred and the ugliness, and you saw signs, I presume you saw the signs that I have seen in photographs where people are expressing this this belief against integration and an attitude of separation and, if not, open hate, and then they would have God on their same sign.
Oh yeah.
And in what ways was your faith tested, and in what ways did your faith get you through that year?
Okay, George, I have to be honest with you about something. It wasn't my faith that got me through, and I'll tell you why in a moment. It was simply pure old determination that I was not going to be caught up in that kind of mess. The reason it was not my faith, because it was not until 1961 that I made my public profession of faith in God. Okay? So, that. Now I'm off track on what I had in mind a while ago. Oh, there is a story. I don't know. You've never heard this one, I'll guarantee you. Because none of you have unless you know somebody that was there that night. They tried as much as possible in 57, 58 to keep things on an even keel like it had been. And one of the things they always did after a football game, they had a dance over in the gym. It was more of a social than anything else. It cost a whole bunch. I think it cost $0.25. But anyway, that particular night after the football game, I happened to be assigned to chaperone, and mine was outside. That was when the 101st was here, by the way. And I was standing around outside, just sort of minding my own business and hoping I'd get to go home pretty quick. And here came this young soldier. I doubt that he was more than 19, could have been 20, just looked like a kid to me. But they all carried rifles, marching very quietly, wasn't trying to be ugly or anything, no get out of my way, just walked along in his beat like this, and he didn't try to get up next to the doors, he walked pretty much out next to the curb. And he got up right in the front, and there was about 4 of the boys, I'd say they were 16, 17 years old. One of them stepped right over in front of him. He stopped. Very politely, he said, "Would you move, please?" And they began to talk kind of nasty to him. And one of them said, "Boy, you think you're something else carrying that gun, don't you? Huh. If I had that, you wouldn't be so big, would you?" And that boy was stupid enough, he reached for the gun. You know what happened? He got the butt of that gun buried in his belly. He didn't want that gun anymore. And they all got out of his way. He proceeded to march right on his post back and forth. It was reported, and because I happened to be a teacher, and because I was present, I had to go before the officer of the guard and give a complete, full report, and it was past 1 o'clock when I got home. She was scared to death. So that's one you haven't heard.
No, it's not. I mean, you're right. I have not heard that story.
And I doubt if you will anywhere else, because there was not another teacher saw it. Now, I don't know how much you know of this. In the last year when it was closed, when the schools were closed, our first week, I guess, the math department would meet and we'd talk, and then each one of us would sit down in our rooms and we'd work out lesson plans and so forth. Well, golly, how long does it take you to work out the lesson plans for the first 3 or 4 weeks? See? Didn't take very long. So after about 2 weeks, no kids. They thought, well, surely we're going to get the kids pretty soon, you know, so let's not let them get too far behind. So in conjunction with the, I'm not sure if it's KYTV or the one out of Pine Bluff.
Channel 7.
Yeah. I'm not sure which one it was. In conjunction with them, they chose various subjects, one of which was a general math, which I was teaching. So for 2 weeks, I taught a 15-minute class on television. Can you imagine what it's like trying to teach class on television to all the kids and nobody in front of you? That was a challenge. So after a couple of weeks, we were pretty much convinced then that we were not going to get any kids for the year. So things kind of went a little different, and I don't know how much of this you've heard. During that first part of the year, in order for us to know where we stood, I'm talking about legally now, we met, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 times with the local association, whose retained lawyer would simply tell us exactly where we were, what we had to do, and so forth in order to fulfill our contracts. And I mean, it's important, very important. We didn't have much, and boy, listen, I like to eat, so I wasn't wanting to miss any paychecks. That was one of the things that was going on during that time. And then after we finished up with the television part, we were pretty much on our own. As long as we came into school at the time we were supposed to. I think we had to be here and checked in no later than 8:30. And we were supposed to stay until 4. Well, you know that. Sometimes you go out 10 till. Sometimes well, we didn't get here any later than 8:30 because classes always began at 8:30. So anyway, that's what we do. But now what happened in between? I read a book or two. Wasn't math either. Pretty soon, there were 3 or 4 of us. Well, I guess it must have been more than that. I think there may have been altogether as many as 7 or 8 of us. Got together and I learned how to play bridge. We'd get back down here in the end in one of the classrooms, learned to play bridge. And I never did get real good at it, but it was enjoyable. It gave us something to do. And then a little bit later on, one of the teachers' names, I'm not sure, you'd have to look it up in here for sure, but I think his name was Lincoln. And that dude could flat out call square dancing. So we learned to square dance. Now, let me tell you this, we did not do it during regular class time. I don't know how you're set up right now for lunchtime, but the way it was then, lunchtime went over a period of an hour and a half. See, we had hour-long classes, and so just to use an example, one class would go to one group would go at 11:30 to 12 for lunch, and then everybody would be in class from 12 to 12:30, and they'd get the cafeteria cleaned up, and then the next group would go from 12:30 to 1. So from 11:30 to 1, we would met down here on the stage. You know how big that stage is. It's big enough we had 2 full sets going when we did it. And man, I got to where I was flat good with that dancing. I could do it. She can tell you. She watched it one time. Yeah, I was good with it. So that was another thing that we did to kill time and pass it.
Well, I want to ask you about the STOP campaign at the end of the school year, that when the teachers at the school board meeting, the 6 school board members, the 3 segregationists voted to not renew, essentially fire 44 teachers and administrators.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, the 3 moderates on the school board had walked out hoping to cause that action to be illegal for lack of a quorum. And the reaction in the community finally was to get this petition drive to recall the segregationists on the school board who had fired these teachers without cause.
Okay, let me answer it like this. I remember hearing about it. I don't really know anything much about it, and I'll give you the reason why. In March of that year, I was reassigned without my permission. They didn't ask me if I wanted to, but you see, during the year, in order to conserve money, all the teachers in Central, or Horace Mann, or whatever, were to be used as substitutes. And I substituted in East Side and Southwest and so forth. And in March of '59, I was assigned to replace a young teacher at Southwest. This was a young first-year teacher who had been given 5 ninth grade general math classes. I'll not talk about that. I have my own opinion of it, and it's not very good. But I had substituted for her once, and when I found out that's where I was going to go, what happened? They literally ran her off. I didn't relish the idea, but it took a few days. But they finally decided, yeah, let old John take care of it. We'll just sit down here and behave ourselves. Now, I wasn't too crazy about those. I didn't mind having a couple of general math classes if I could have a little algebra, maybe a little geometry. Later on, maybe a little algebra too. I didn't mind that. I liked it. And I didn't really want to teach junior high. I wanted high school. So somewhere along, maybe just after Easter, it was up toward the end of April, I think, I came in one Friday afternoon and I said to my wife, Lois, I said, how long will it take you to get ready for us to go up to your mom's? She says, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes. Well, we didn't have much, so it didn't take very long. So we took off up there, and then next morning, bright and early, we went on to Springfield, Missouri. She had a sister and a brother that lived in Springfield. And the year before, just as I thought, I turned in an application to them, but had never heard from them. And I told her, I said, I'm going to go up there and I'm going to call them and see if anybody's there. And this is Saturday now. So we got there at about 9 o'clock. I called over to the central office, and the assistant superintendent for elementary was there. And I told him who I was and what I wanted. He said, well, if you can be here in 30 minutes, I'll be here. I said, all right, I'll be there.